Okay. I think we
There
are
we
good.
go.
Go.
Thank you. Sorry, I know where it is now.
We're used to Zoom, so
Yes.
that's where it always throws me off.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
So my name is Caitlin, and I work with schools in your district and surrounding that have Wayground or have added it, or are looking into what's new. And Justin's excited to share some of the new updates that can support your tier instruction, ESL strategies, and then differentiation in your classrooms. All right, Justin, I'll let you take it away. And any questions, throw it in the chat, and I will answer them as they come in.
Awesome. All right. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much for letting me hop on. Happy to go through all these things with you guys. Just a little bit about me. Former teacher, taught middle school for 12 years, taught special ed, taught ancient history, and then 3 years as a tech coach, and then found my way here at Wayground. And that's a little bit about me. If you can't tell already, I am not from South Carolina. I know I've been told I have a very strong Chicago accent, so I apologize in advance for that if it's a little grating. But yeah, I'm really excited. We can go through, like Caitlin said, we'll talk about how you can differentiate, how you can support students with accommodations and those that are multilingual, some of the data reportings, just a lot of cool stuff we'll dive into. We'll go through this presentation, and then if we have time, we can kind of play around within the platform as well, just to show you where things are. But let's go ahead and get this show underway, shall we? All right, so here's the plan for today. In the next 45 minutes or so, we will go through how you can support your students within tier 1 and 2, going through like our instructional suite and the different types of tools and activities you can make. We'll go through how you can do ELL support. We can also talk about how you might utilize Wayground for SEL support, which, like I said, as a former SPED teacher, that kind of thing is always super fascinating to me. And we've worked with some districts and schools that have started to use it that way. So we can go through that as well. We'll touch on the accommodations. We're up to about 20 or so right now, how that works. We'll also take you through how differentiation worked within the platform. So if you've ever had to make another version of a test, whether it was fewer answer choices or changing sentence structures or having to rewrite questions to make them better for lower reading levels, you guys are all aware that takes a very long time, right? So now with the click of a button, we can do that for you, and you can compare and contrast and make changes afterwards. So we'll talk about that. We'll dive into some of the other AI tools, whether it's being able to reduce the reading level of text that maybe you want to bring into the platform. We'll talk about some of the data reporting that goes along with how AI can be used. And then we'll wrap up with some of the different question types that we wanted to call out, because obviously we have quite a few now. But there are some that, lend themselves better to different subject matter. So we want to make sure we call that out as well. And like Caitlin said, if at any point I'm showing you something or we're talking about something and you need clarification, you want another question, or you want to ask a question, throw it in the chat and we can totally have that discussion. We are more than happy to do so. All right, let's get to the fun stuff. So our first part here is in terms of tier 1 and 2 instruction, we kind of wanted to call out our resource library in terms of what we have access to. If you just want to log into Wayground and you're looking for something supplemental, maybe you don't have time to make something yourself, you just want a good piece of content that your students are going to benefit from, that you can practice with or review, we can do that for you. So I go to my next slide here. The great thing about this is that you can utilize any of those additional features within our instructional hub. So if you want to build out assessments, awesome. You can go into our library. You can search for assessments that are aligned to your math and science curriculum. You can look for assessments that are aligned to your state standards. You can also generate content for yourself if you want. Thankfully, we have a partnership with Instructure, so we have access now to all core 4 standards for your science, your reading, ELA, your social studies, your math. Every single standard from South Carolina is in there. And you can ask the platform or the AI to say, hey, you know what? These are the standards I want to focus on today. Make me a quick assessment so I can check for understanding based on what I teach my students. And then literally within about 30 seconds, you have that. And the one thing we always try too is, North Carolina. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Caitlin. North Carolina. Sorry, man. Already starting off on a bad note. I apologize. But the great thing about that is that when you do tag those North Carolina standards, you also get some really cool data reporting to identify where your students maybe have gaps, where they are struggling, who's struggling, and then also we can surface additional practice content for them. In terms of presentations, that's been a really unique feature that recently got a big update in the last month or so. oftentimes when we say, hey, you can bring in your Google slide deck into Wayground or your PowerPoint presentation, we hear from a lot of teachers and districts that are like, well, why would I want to do that, right? Like I have my Apple TV, or I have my Chromecast, or I have my smart board to project everything. I'm good. I don't need this. The reason we call that out is because now you can add question slides within your presentations, or you can have the AI do it, totally up to you. But the great thing about that is twofold. So number one, if you are teaching something and you're worried about, students being inattentive, this now provides gamification. So there's a leaderboard after each question, even though it's in the middle of your lesson or your lecture. They earn points, they earn coins, so they can build out their little avatar and deck them out in cool clothing. But even more importantly than that is, as the teacher, as we are going through my live lesson and the students get to a question slide, I now get data reporting immediately to let me know how my students are doing based on what I just taught, right? So I'm teaching about ancient Rome and we talk about the origin story of Romulus and Remus. We have our discussion, I show a video, I show a meme, all those good things. And then we get to the next slide and it's like, okay, we'll explain what this was all about. And if on my computer, I see that most of my students aren't able to explain it, I can stop that gap from occurring right there and then. We can go back, we can reteach, we can come at it from a different angle. All those things are immediately taken care of right now, right? In terms of passages, you can now generate content if you are looking for reading comprehension. So it doesn't matter what subject matter, you can bring in a PDF or a short story or an article, anything you have. You can then upload it, add questions to it, or have the AI add questions for you. On the flip side, if you teach something that is maybe science-based or history, and you want something that is concrete, nonfiction, that is accurate and has important facts, we also, when you give the AI a prompt saying, hey, write me this article on, I don't know, how about changes in agricultural technology, right? The AI will source all those information pieces for me. It will cite them all. And then as the teacher, I don't have to fear anymore of, okay, well, it went out and made this thing, but I have no idea where it came from. It's all there for me. And literally with a click, I can go in and take a look at it myself. So wanted to call that out. And then lastly, videos and flashcards. Videos are really unique. We have our YouTube for Education partnership. We have our Bow Clips partnership. So there are, last I checked, we have about 2 million videos in the platform from our end, but we have that YouTube embedding as well. So you choose a video that maybe you've used 1,000 times in the past. You can then add questions to it or create questions with AI, totally up to you. And then finally, anything you do on the platform, with a simple click, it turns it into flashcards. So now your students can focus on what do they know, what do they still need to learn, and they can kind of take some of that ownership over their learning as well. So that is the instructional hub in general. That is all the different cool things you can do within Wayground. I know that is a lot. And I apologize to throw all that at you. But now we will kind of dive into some of the other things that you can do within the platform that accentuates some of those things that you're making, right? Okay, so like I said, we also have resources for all those things. So if you don't have time to import something that you already have used in the past, or maybe you don't have the opportunity to have the AI build something for you, you also have the ability to look through our library. So we have partnerships with different groupings, different organizations. We have aligned a lot of our content in the library to both state standards and different curriculum providers. So for example, say you teach 8th grade math and you utilize Go Math. You can go into the platform and see everything we have that aligns to what you're teaching that day with your Go Math curriculum. You're not going to see the textbook pages. You're not going to see workbook pages or anything like that. It's literally all the stuff that we already have in our library that has been vetted and ready to go. And we surface all of that for you based on what curriculum you use. As of right now, that works for science and math. ELA is coming, and we are roughly going through about 6th to 12th grade right now, but we're eventually working on elementary too. So that is one of the other new things that is coming your way. Yeah, it's just nice being able to say, hey, you know what? If I want to borrow something from the Wayground library, excellent, go for it. If you want to bring something in from your own experience that you've used for a year, 5 years, 10 years, great, bring it in. We can digitize it. We can build out supplemental content based on it. Or you can build something else in the platform, either with AI or from scratch. It's totally up to you. All right. And then the other thing in terms of curriculum, here's some of the curriculum and some of the partnerships we do have. We have more coming. So Envisions and Big Ideas Math, Inspire Science, Amplify Science, all those things are in there so that they are bundled together. You literally click on it, you click on the grade, and you can get a list of everything that you might be teaching that day from that curriculum. And then we, with a click of a button, surface all the material that has been built out in our library ready to go for you. And what's great about it too is you are not stuck using it verbatim, right? So if we have something that we surface from Amplify Science, you're like, well, I kind of like half of this, but there's a couple questions here that, I'm not really worrying about that with my students. No problem. You can totally copy and edit the stuff that we surface to you and make it your own. You can change the question types. You can make it more higher level thinking. You can make it more lower level if it's more introductory. You really have the freedom to control however you like. And then also here calling out our Desmos and PhET partnerships. So for PhET, if you're not familiar with PhET, that's our physics simulations partnership. And what's really unique about that is when you go into the passages, which is generally we think of as reading comprehension, we've built out about 40 to 50 different physics simulations now. So the students literally have on one side of their screen, they have an interactive physics simulation that they can play around with and work through. And then on the other side, there's pre-made questions that they can kind of work their way through, telling them what types of things they can change within the simulation and see how there's a response to it. So for example, there's one with, being able to increase gravity and inertia with a pendulum. There's one with, being able to identify how static electricity works and how it goes through certain objects, but not others, right? And it really, again, makes it interactive. And then the other thing there is that we have a Desmos partnership. So if you need to utilize scientific calculators or graphing calculators, we have that all on the platform. If you teach math and you're, focusing on slope-intercept and slope-intercept form or equations, I should say, and you need your students to calculate that slope, the rise over run, one of the few things I still remember from math class, you can do all that. If you're graphing parabolas or exponential growth, we have that in there as well, thanks to those partnerships. So again, this is just a taste of what we already have on the platform. There is even more coming, and this is something we're trying to devote a lot of resources to so that we can make life easier for you. Let's see here. And I just saw Kelly in the chat. How about WIDA English language development standards? They are utilized for EL. That is something we can always bring back to the team, Kelly. And I know if that's something that's important, sometimes what we can do is we can talk with the team and see how we can maybe potentially implement that. I don't want to say one way or the other, 100%, but that is something that we always try and have those discussions if there are additional standards that potentially could be beneficial to your school or your district. Great question. All right, let's move on. Okay. This is the big one for me. And again, I'm biased being a former special ed teacher. And this is the ability to differentiate, right? So a couple things right off the bat, we know that, granted you might teach elementary, middle school, high school, but as the students start to get older, and I've seen this firsthand, and I'm sure a lot of you on this call have seen this too, is that when you do have to approach that student who maybe gets a different version of the test, maybe their test has fewer answer choices, right? Or maybe they have a test that has, some additional accommodations that go along with it. Maybe you need to pull them for a small group. Maybe you need to have it read to them. But as you approach that student, sometimes as they get older, you see that look on their face where it's like, please just walk by. I will gladly take my test without the accommodations because I don't want the stigma of looking different, right? I don't want my peers to identify that. And it's heartbreaking. It's totally heartbreaking. It used to ruin my day when I would see that because I'm like, I know you need these accommodations to meet your needs, but then you also have to rationalize like the social emotional side of it, right? But the reason I bring that up is with all of the accommodations we're going to show you here within Wayground, it's all done on the back end. So you no longer have to worry about students being aware of who's getting a different version of something. It's all done on the back end. You literally push out one link to your assessments or your lessons, and the system is able to identify who has what accommodations, and it's all done on their screen. So for example, if I know that, Caitlin needs something translated in Spanish for her assessment, she will get the Spanish version of the assessment, but it's the same exact link. Right? If I know that, just because I see Kelly's name in the chat, if I know that Kelly needs extended time where maybe she needs an extra 5 or 10 minutes on each question, she will get those extra minutes. No one else is aware that that's going to be on her assessment. So we've taken that stigma out of special ed and out of, having accommodations, which I absolutely love. I apologize. I'll get off my soapbox now, but just wanted to call that out. So again, this is something you might hear in your classroom. Students needing extra time, someone benefiting from having the assessment read to them, your ELL students that are maybe working their way through a multilingual program, your students that really need a modified or differentiated version of the test. Those are all things we can do now within Wayground. So a lot of that lift and a lot of that time sink that is taken up by having to make sure those accommodations are being met, we can do that ourselves for you. so that you have some of that time given back to, do the other teacherly duties that you have. We are totally aware that teachers are pulled in about 6 million different directions. So that is our goal here, is to try and make life a little bit easier for you. So for example, if I'm giving an assessment, and I apologize, I know the font's a little small here, but let's just say group 1 is my gen ed version of the science test. And group 2, though, is maybe for my ELL students that are native Spanish speakers, but maybe this is a Spanish speaker that also struggles academically. Okay, cool. They get the same, they're having the same test, but one is in English, one is in Spanish, one has 4 answer choices, the other has 2. And again, no one is aware of this except the teacher. But now we are able to remove those barriers to entry for those students that really struggle or maybe need accommodations. So that's just one component of things that we're trying to do in order to meet the needs of as many kids as we can. Here's a few other examples of some of our accommodations. In terms of question settings, like I said, we've talked about extra time. If you are someone who likes to provide additional attempts, right? If you have a student who the first time they take an assessment, they're going to rush through it for whatever rhyme or reason. Okay, cool. We're going to make sure that whenever we do an assessment, you get 2 attempts, because maybe the second time you're able to kind of slow down and pace yourself a little bit better. Those reduction of answer choices, that's already built in. That translation and bilingual dictionary, we have about 80 different languages we can translate to, and we are always looking for more. I have to say the engineering team is incredible. We worked with the district down in New Orleans a while back, and they needed Creole added. And literally within 3 days, we had Creole up and running. So like the idea that it doesn't matter what the language is, that barrier should not be there anymore, right? We want to make life easier for that student and for yourself. And then on the flip side, with the bilingual dictionary, if you have those students who are working their way out of an ESL or ELL program, but you still want to have a safety net to make sure, that they don't lose too much self-esteem if they struggle or if they have a difficult day, being able to identify how things are being translated. That bilingual dictionary is really neat, because what it will do is we'll go in and identify key academic vocabulary and then provide the ability for a student to hover over and get that term in their native language. So now they don't need the entire assessment translated, but just key words are translated to kind of continue to hopefully have that gradual release where we're getting fewer and fewer accommodations as they continue to rise up, right? So wanted to call that out. The other big one here would be the dyslexia font. So what we've done is we've gone ahead and built out a dyslexic font that focuses on the sizing of the actual letters themselves and the spacing between the letters. And then in addition to that, you'll see different parts of the letter have different width in narrowness. I don't know if narrowness is a word, but they have different width. We'll go with that to kind of hopefully make life a little bit easier for your students who struggle with dyslexia, right? We talked with some teachers that for some instances, all they had was they would try and put color overlays on a student's screen to hopefully assist. And granted, that might not help with all versions of dyslexia, but they're making their best effort, where hopefully this can kind of come in and help suit that need as well. And then lastly, things like the learning environment. In terms of the don't show the leaderboard, we talked with the district who had some students that really struggled with external behaviors, right? So they would see that they were not at the top of the leaderboard, and a chair would go flying across the room, which is never a good thing. But if that's the case, you can turn the leaderboard off for that one particular student. They're still having the fun, gamified quiz activity, if that's what you're doing. But the rest of the students that are okay with that leaderboard and aren't going to have those negative triggers or behaviors, it's still turned on for them. So really, ultimately, what we've tried to do is build out this platform so that regardless of whatever barriers or accommodations are needed to reach the content that the teachers are building or using, we can kind of blend that and close that gap to make sure everything's working as well as it can. So I hope that makes sense. I know that was a lot to take in, but again, don't worry, we are recording, so you guys can always look back at this if you like as well. And then lastly, like we said, we have the read aloud translations, bilingual dictionaries. If you look on the screen here in those 2 GIFs, that's what that looks like. Just wanted to provide a visual. If you're anything like me, visuals are the only way I learn anything. But again, you have that speaker, the student can click on it to have it read aloud to them. And then the same thing, if they need something translated, they turn that toggle on and it is translated. And like I said, I know I'm probably sounding like a broken record, but we have about 80 different languages. So does not matter wherever your students are coming from or whatever language they speak, there's a good chance that we can help them out and get them access to the curriculum or the assessments that you are using, right? I know in talking with some schools, we talked with ESL and ELL staff, and They do an amazing job with the resources they have. But sometimes if it's a language, we worked with one district that had a large Ukrainian population coming into the district, and they had some Ukrainian resources, but it wasn't necessarily on grade level, and it wasn't always necessarily aligned with whatever new curriculum they were using, but that's what they had to refer back to, right? That's the only thing they could provide at that moment. And now that doesn't matter, right? Whatever you build in the platform, whether it's an assessment or a lesson, I should call that out too. If you are doing presentations, you can turn all these accommodations on for presentations too. So then that way that Ukrainian student can learn everything they need to learn about the digestive system if that's what you're teaching that day. And that language barrier does not matter anymore, which is a complete game changer for a lot of teachers, I'm sure. And then lastly, we talked a little bit about this as well. If you need, a reduction of answer choices, extra time, we also have the extended deadline now too. So that way, if you've ever had to utilize, your Google Classroom or certain LMSs, sometimes it's very difficult. And I know this because I used to have this issue as well. But if I knew that, I had a small group of students who they were going to have an additional week on a project, right? Typically, I would have to assign a separate project to them, hide that though from everyone else in the LMS or in the Google Classroom account so that they didn't see those students were getting extra time, because I want to be very cognizant of that. And then you're flipping back and forth, and it's just a little bit more time consuming. Now you just tell us what students have that extended deadline, and they automatically get it going forward. They don't need to stress about that. So it also brings me to my next point too, is once you set these accommodations once, you're done. You don't have to do it again. If you'd like to set them for each individual assessment, you totally can. But you can also set it once at the beginning of the year, or once you get those IEP documents in so you know who has an accommodation. You set it once and you're done. Every single assessment going forward will be translated, or will provide it read aloud, or will have that extended time. And you do not need to stress out or fear about being out of compliance, or accommodations being met, or a due process hearing because someone unfortunately forgot to read something to someone, right? That goes away. And that, I know that fear, especially for SPED teams, that fear can be kind of a big burden, right? Of knowing that there's always a chance, through fault of no one and not maliciously, but sometimes, when you teach 150 students, there's always a chance. Maybe you forget, I didn't give that test that had the lesser answer choices to Jimmy that day. And you don't have to worry about that now because it's taken care of for you. All right. And then the other thing it's relatively new, I'll play this. There's no sound on it, but what you'll see here is it's just, if you have students who maybe kind of rush through questions and maybe don't always necessarily think back to the, anecdotal stories or the information that you taught them, we also have the ability to turn on optional AI hints. So again, this works for every subject matter because it's done through the AI. But what you can turn on for students, if you want, totally optional, you can turn this on. And then that way, if the student is struggling, what it will do is it will kind of do like a Socratic question for them. And it will say, okay, think about, do you remember how X, Y, and Z works, to kind of guide them in the right direction, right? In terms of it being a hint, it's not going to give them the answer. It's not going to direct them to the answer or anything like that. But it's more of just like, hey, let's ask you some questions to help you kind of think about what you've already learned and kind of re-jog your memory. But again, that can be turned on for everybody. Can be turned on for a select few if you like. Totally up to you. All right. And then the last set of accommodations would be our learning environment ones. So we talked about the leaderboard, but if you need different visual modes, the color overlays, if you need it darker, lighter, things like that, we do have speech to text now. So if you have students who, being able to work a keyboard is just not in the cards, it's not an option due to, a variety of reasons. That is not a barrier to entry anymore either. You can turn that on for your open-ended questions, as you can see in that GIF on the right. And if they are doing an extended response question, they can literally now speak to the computer and have it, they can dictate to it and get their answer across so that you as the teacher can assess whether or not they understand what you taught them. And that's pretty much it in terms of accommodations. So again, all of these accommodations can be utilized both for assessments and your lesson presentations. And yeah, you're still all done through one link. So no one is aware of the additional support that someone might be getting. All right. And I don't see any questions in the chat. So I'm hoping this is all good. If we're going too fast or too slow, please let me know. Like I said, I know I got that Midwestern talk too fast thing going. So please tell me if I need to slow down and chill out for a second. That's not a big deal. All right. So the other thing that we have now is our new differentiated versions. So I know we kind of referenced this earlier when we got started, but if you are someone who needs to make a different version of an assessment, you know, I'm sure I'm speaking to the choir, right? Like that's a pretty comprehensive process. You got to look through the questions, identify, okay, which questions am I keeping the same so that they're on grade level for my students? Which questions am I changing the vocabulary in terms of the sentence structure and the words that are used? What questions am I removing altogether? Or am I going to make this a lesser version in terms of fewer questions, right? That takes a long time. Totally takes a long time. I'm sure that's not earth shattering. But what this does now is you literally go into your math, science or ELA assessments, and they're all live now. I know the deck for math is coming by back to school. It is past back to school. We're all good. I got to make sure I update that. But they're all out there. And literally what you do is if I made an assessment, as in this example, you know, all about photosynthesis and chloroplasts and plant cells and all that good stuff. I go to that assessment I made, and there's literally just a button that says, okay, add differentiated version. I choose what reading level I want that new version at, and the AI makes it for me within 10 seconds. So something that used to, you know, take me just from my own personal experience, like a planned period or two, if I was lucky enough to have a planned period that day, that took a quite a bit of time and also just a lot of, you know, bandwidth in terms of your head and your headspace in terms of making sure everything looks good. It does it for you automatically now. And even better, you can then pull up both and kind of flip back and forth between the two to see how it changed and how it modified it, right? So the one thing I will stress is the academic vocab, if there is academic vocab that, you know, is relevant to the topic that you taught, that's not changing. It's just the sentence structure and the, you know, the regular vocabulary in terms of keywords that you're asking for, right? So, you know, if I have this default version that's at the 9th grade level, what is the pigment and chloroplast that performs photosynthesis? The question, if I were to reduce that to maybe a 6th grade reading level or a 5th grade reading level, and it just might be, you know what is the thing within chloroplast that makes photosynthesis happen, right? It might kind of change that language a little bit. And then ultimately you have the ability to remove questions if you like and kind of change that at will. On the flip side, if you have those students that are really high flyers and are always pushing themselves, and you know that they would benefit from having something that's maybe above grade level in terms of the reading level to kind of push them and kind of see where they're at, you can also do this for the above grade level students as well. So if you have those high flyers that this might be a 9th grade science test, but I know they can handle probably a 10th or 11th grade vocabulary, I can do that. Sentence structure changes, makes it a little bit tougher, but my key academic vocab is still going to be there, and the questions are going to still be asking the same things. So again, that's for math, science, and language arts, and you can do that with any assessment you make. All right. And then ultimately, we also want to be aware of, I know this is controversial probably, but we want school to be fun, right? That is why when I was still in teaching, that was my goal. I wanted the kids to come in and be excited to come and learn, right? And make it something that is worthwhile. I'm sure all of you guys, just like me, I can think back to certain teachers I had in classes where they made it fun. So then when I do meet up with my friends that were in class with me occasionally, like we still have that conversation like, oh, do you remember when Mr. Smith did X, Y, and Z, right? So we want to be able to provide that opportunity for you as well. So what we've done is try and develop question types and different ways to gamify your activities so that students will have fun and will enjoy it and look forward to it, right? There's nothing worse than, you know, when I taught ancient history, having students come in and be like, all right, guys, you know, we got to do a lesson. I got to teach you guys all about, let's go with ancient Greece today. And you would get some kids that would be like, oh, I don't want to learn about this. This isn't relevant to me. This isn't fun. We've tried to, through a variety of question types and interactive activities, kind of bring that back and make it fun for them, right? So just want to call out some of the different question types here. One in particular, you know, we have our reorder questions. So if you are doing things that are on like a timeline, right, in terms of key events throughout history, you can do that. They can manipulate it, move things around. Same thing if you want to organize something that is more math focused, right? Like your larger to smaller or smaller to larger fractions. That is all things you can do within the platform in terms of reordering. If they have, you know, a mouse, a stylus, a touch screen, they can manipulate all these things and take care of that. So it doesn't just have to be the standard, hey, this is your multiple choice question, answer it and move on to the next one. We can make it a little bit more interactive for them. So that's one way that you can utilize this. Another one would be within our labeling. And what's neat about that is you can also ask the AI to generate labels for you if it's able to identify what you're looking for. You literally can just import a picture or choose a picture from Google Images, which is already in the platform. You do that, and then the AI will turn itself on and say, hey, I'm looking at this picture. This is a picture of a leaf. Here's some terms you might have done. Feel free to use them. And if not, you click on where you want to set your label and you're good to go. And then again, students can manipulate it. And it's not just your basic, okay, true or false, a vein is a part of a leaf, right? There's a little bit more in-depth, higher level order thinking because they have to figure out and exactly manipulate, okay, where is the vein of a leaf? What am I looking at, right? To make it a little more engaging. So you could do that for science diagrams. You could do that for, parts of a sentence, like it says on here. We've seen people do it for Venn diagrams where they're maneuvering different types of context for maybe a story that they just read, and they're identifying two different characters and then manipulating the character traits throughout the question. Those are all things you can do in real time if you would like. All right, the hotspot one. This one is probably my favorite, but the reason I wanted to call this out is one thing we hear about Wayground when we do PD and we're at conferences and conventions and things like that is, obviously the middle school, the high school teachers, they're pretty comfortable once they know how it works. But oftentimes we hear things from, lower elementary. They're like, it's cool, but I don't really know if my lower elementary kids can tackle this one. As somebody who was a tech coach in an elementary building for 3 years, trying to get kindergartners and first graders to follow directions when you're doing something on a computer is like pulling teeth. So I totally get that. But we've also identified questions like this that can hopefully be used with your lower elementary, as well as your high school and middle school students too. But so for example, for this one, you could set up a question here. You can record your voice or import a sound of, say, hey, this is going to be a tiger roaring. My students click on it using the touch screen, and then they have these different points on here, and it just says, okay, what do you hear? They have their visuals, and then they would literally just click on this circle for the tiger, and then I can assess whether or not they understood the question and comprehended it, right? So we've seen this used for a variety of things, whether it be for box style questions that might show up on a high stakes standardized testing where you're organizing certain data boxes or data charts and being able to identify what chart has what. You could do it that way. We've seen it for geography activities where, it doesn't have to be a dot. You can also make it a polygonal shape. So if you are identifying, key states in the Southwest, we can literally make the button look like New Mexico and California and things like that, and then have the students click on it to identify which state is which. But really, the ability to say, hey, even for your lower elementary, if they maybe struggle with reading, you can put in recordings of your voice. You can put in recordings of yourself talking for the question. If you have a 10-second clip of you kind of discussing what you're looking for in the answer, now the students, even if they can't read very well or really struggle with reading, they can hear what you had to say and then choose their correct answer as well. So my hope is that obviously just kind of throwing out some of these different use cases might be beneficial in terms of helping out and making sure your students can benefit from it. And then lastly, last one we wanted to call out. I will not subject you to my drawing skills. They are awful. My daughter reminds me that of every night when we do some drawing together. But what we've seen for this one in particular, this is a great one for math. So if you are trying to have students solve a certain type of equation, or maybe you're trying to balance a chemical, a chemical equation in terms of your coefficients and your molecules and all that good stuff, right? Being able to, have them write that out. And then you as the teacher get that data point showing exactly what they did. You can identify where they went wrong. All that is there surfaced to you, ready to go. And there's no questions about, okay, I know you got this wrong, but where did you make the mistake? With the drawing questions, you can do that, right? And again, it doesn't even have to be for math. If you have a certain image that maybe you want your students to work on or identify key locations, key points, you can do that too. We've even seen this used for, electives like art class and being able to look for certain key parts in a painting that identifies, is it an impressionist painting? Is it something that Monet would do? I don't know. I'm going to stop there because my art history is not very good. But the idea is you could really utilize this in a variety of ways. So I wanted to call this out as well. All right. Now, before we wrap up, we got about 10 minutes or so maybe. I wanted to just kind of take you through a few other things in the platform that you might find beneficial in addition to all this stuff. So if that's okay, bear with me real quick here. Let me open up a different tab. And here we go. I'm going to share this tab instead. There we go. All right. Hopefully, I think everybody can see. Yeah, it looks like everyone can see my screen now. Okay. So a couple of the things I just want to call out. Thank you, Caitlin. I appreciate it. We talked a little bit about those curriculum aligned resources. Those are all here. You literally just click on it. you can identify, if you want math or science, you can identify what grade level you're looking for, and we can surface all that content for you. The other thing you can do is also search by standard. We have more states coming, but luckily North Carolina made the initial cut in terms of these standards aligned resources. So you're good to go there. So for example, if I taught science grade 6, I could go in here and click on this. And now we have a list of all your North Carolina state standards for science for grade 6. I can go through and let's say I know I'm going to be focusing on, I don't know, how about seismic sound and electromagnetic waves. I can click on that. And then what we do is we surface all the content in our library that aligns with that standard. So again, we know teachers are capable of creating amazing things, and I'm sure you all have that amazing content already. And if you bring it into the platform, that's awesome. You can use it that way. But if you're also looking for something supplemental to go along with it, we have that in there and ready to go. Amber says, do you have the worksheets available to go with those lessons? Great question. So in terms of the worksheets from a curriculum, no. So if I go back to the curriculum here, hold on. So let's say you did use Amplify Science. What this is going to do is if I know I'm teaching about, thermal energy that day, I can go in, here's my actual lessons that we have. We know we're broken down in the text. Say I'm going to do changing in temperature. What that's going to do then is surface everything we have in our library that aligns with that particular skill. But in terms of like textbook pages or workbook pages or worksheets that are from your curriculum, you're not going to see that in here. What you could do though is you could always take a picture or scan in your worksheet, bring it into the platform, and you can use it that way too. So you really have kind of the best of both worlds, whether it's that supplemental stuff we have or not. Andrea, great question. This is coming in the very near future, like in the next week or so. So that might be why I'm on a beta version of a new homepage. I apologize. I should have mentioned that. This is coming within the next week or so. So it will be there. So do not stress there. I apologize. I should have called that out. That's my fault. The other thing I just want to call out real quick here is our Wayground AI toolkit. So if you go down here to Wayground AI, let me share this tab. I always forget Google Meets does this. We have our little toolkit here that's got some really unique and some cool, fun stuff in here that can be beneficial to you. So this is genuinely a way that you can utilize AI to kind of hopefully ease some of the tasks that maybe you have, right? So if you need to build out, say you want to build out an evaluation rubric. Maybe I'm doing an extended response question, or I have an essay question coming up on assessment, right? I can just say, okay, let's say we're going to make this a persuasive essay. And then my objective for this essay, gosh, I remember having to do this every couple of years, but we'll say students will write a persuasive essay on why or why not the school district should have school uniforms. I feel like that was the go-to in the 90s. We always had to use that as our thing. But anyway, let's say my students are going to be doing this in 6th grade. We're going to switch it to English class. Again, I can choose to make this rubric in a different language with a simple click if I need to. And then I also have the ability to build out my rubric by points. So we can do partial grading as well. It doesn't have to be black and white, yes or no, 0 or 1, pass, fail, and whatever you want to call it that. So let's just say, okay, I'm going to do this on a 4-point scale. I'm going to hit generate. And now it's going to say, okay, here is the rubric it's building for me in real time. It's going to give, points awarded on the introduction, points awarded for the body paragraphs, the counter arguments, being able to identify what someone opposing me might say, and then also the conclusion, and then language and grammar, and then also the persuasiveness. Now, again, you can always make changes. This is just the AI giving its best attempt. But what's really cool about this is I can literally say, all right, you know what? I want to copy this rubric, and we're going to copy it. And then what I can do is if I go back to Wayground, there we go. And if I create an assessment, and I apologize, I know I'm going to go and click, but we can take our time with this in a little bit. I can go to an open-ended question, and then this is my essay. I can say, should we have school uniforms? Why or why not? But then what I can do is go into this auto evaluate feature, turn that on, and I have my English class. I'm going to turn on partial grading and say we can do 4 points. And I can literally paste my rubric in there, and you'll notice it's going to look a little off because the formatting didn't adjust perfectly, but that is okay. It still works, no problem there. And then when my students take it, the AI will actually grade it for me and award a point. And we can go from there. And then I can look and the AI will grade it for me. Now, again, I am not beholden to that AI. I can overrule the grade. So, you know, if I did type something in there and I said, oh, we shouldn't have school uniforms because it's dumb. And I don't like that idea because I like wearing my, you know, I don't know, I want to say Jenko jeans in starter jacket, but that's what I wore in grade school. And, you know, obviously clearly that is not a good response, right? That's like a 2-sentence response. The AI could come in, grade it, maybe probably give them like 1 point for just saying like, hey, you answered something, but it wasn't really on task. And then I can go in and have the AI evaluate like, okay, where could they have made suggestions for improvement? Do I want to overwrite the score? Maybe I know they're really a struggling writer and they did their very best. Okay, I'm going to bump you up to a 2. You can make those adjustments as you need to, right? So just wanted to call that out since we had a little bit of extra time here. And then the last thing I wanted to show real quick is we'll go back into that AI toolkit, and I keep looking to make sure my screen is updating with you guys. There we go. We'll go back in here. And I also wanted to call this out because this is something that I feel like could be very beneficial to you as well. And that would be our text grade level adjuster and our translation feature. So let's say, you know what, you have a short story that you always read with your class. You know, maybe on Halloween, you always read The Telltale Heart, right? And I only bring that up because that's what I used to do with my class. I can literally go in to this text grade level adjuster and I can paste that original text of The Telltale Heart. And obviously, even for middle schoolers, it can be kind of tough because it's kind of like that old English style Edgar Allan Poe writing, right? But I can go in, I can paste that text in there and then say, okay, you know what? I know I have some students in my middle school class that are maybe 5th grade readers. I want you to take that story, that classic story, and bring it down to a 5th grade reading level. And then literally it will do that within 30 seconds. And I can push that out to my students as well so that, you know, they might be at a different reading level than the rest of the class, but now they're at least getting the same story. The vocabulary is going to be different, right? And the sentence structure is going to be different. But when, say, Susie and Billy meet on the playground and they say, oh yeah, we read Telltale Heart. Wasn't that crazy? Like, that guy went nuts, right? They're still having that same conversation, even though now they're reading 2 different stories, but their vocabulary is different. Like that's a really beneficial thing. So wanted to call that out. The other thing we also wanted to make you guys aware of, if you do have a large population of students that are multilingual, or even if you only have a handful, right? We also are aware that not every multilingual learner may speak in their native language on grade level, right? So I might have a Polish native speaker that only speaks Polish, but we can kind of tell based on some data we've gathered or conversations we've had, maybe they're a grade level or 2 below in terms of their reading, right? I can paste in the Polish text from whatever I've created and generated. And then again, I can say, you know what, now I want this to be in Polish this time. And now not only will it still be in Polish, but it will also be at that lower reading level as well. So just wanted to call that out because, again, that is something that could be a real game changer in terms of things that could maybe benefit students. But yeah, Amber said, I might have missed this, but does this add images or do we upload pictures? You can add images yourself to any question you want. You can add video to any question you want. You can add audio to any question you'd like. If you want to, you know, do a little bit more or make it a little bit more interactive, you totally have that option. Whoop. And then, yeah, I think that about covers it. Caitlin, is there anything else you would like that we could show off before we wrap up? I know we wanted to leave about 10 minutes or so for questions, so I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything or if there's anything else you'd like to hit on.
Yeah, there was one question, and you may know it. I'm writing it down to ask, when creating a lesson with the questions from AI, can we create a printable version from that presentation?
That is a good question. Let's actually, you know what? We're going to go in and look right now. Let's see. So let me go into my library and search for presentation.
Amber, when you say, does this add images, you can add and upload images. Are you talking about when it syncs? What can you clarify?
So yes, we are all good. So yeah, if this was my presentation here, this was one I uploaded. I can download this as a PDF. Then my students can look on it if they don't have their device or maybe it wasn't charged. You'll see all my memes, all my content is here and ready to go. So you can do it that way as well. Good question. Obviously the videos and the video embeds won't go, but yeah. Want pictures to understand, so pictures help them a lot. Yeah, so if I go in, let me just go into a regular assessment here, and hopefully this will answer your question. If it's not, please let me know. But let's just say, you know what, I need a multiple choice question, and oh gosh, let's just say, you know, the question is, you know what, oh man, I'm drawing a blank. Let's just say, you know what, identify or choose the correct answer, which is a maple tree. And now what I can do is I can add my own image if I want to give them a reminder. I can also record audio. So if I need to speak that to them, if they are more auditory listeners, I can do it that way. And then, or I can record my own voice if I want, or my own audio together and do a video. But in terms of questions, yes, if this is what I'm thinking you're getting at, Amber, what I can do is, especially for my non-native English speakers, you know, if this is a picture of, you know, if I just, let's just say I put an oak tree here, but obviously that might not be beneficial. I can always go in and add an image. I can either import my own image, or I can search Google Images right here, and I can put in an oak tree and drop that in. So they have those images there, and you can insert them. And I'm hoping that answers your question. If it doesn't, let me know. I'm happy to try and dive a little bit deeper. But yeah, any question type, you can always insert pictures as well if you like. You can insert GIFs. I do that for a lot of the. Oh, I am so sorry. Yes. Oh, Google Meet, you're going to be the death of me. Yes. So here's what I did. Here's my question. Sorry, Amber. So here's the question I wrote. Again, not a good question. I apologize. Here is where I can add images to the question, record my own voice, or also record a video of myself talking them through it. And then here, I just typed in oak tree as my answer. But then what I can do is, let's just say, okay, oak tree is my answer. I can then go in and click this little picture button. I can upload my own picture, or I can search, and this goes through Google. So I can just search for an oak tree, and I can just drop that in. And now I have that as well to help out. Yep. And I apologize. I'm literally looking out the window and I see an oak tree. So that's why we have the tree questions here. They're really bad. I apologize on that. But yes, that's exactly, if that's what you're looking for, I'm hoping that answers that question for you. And now I'm wondering if that is an oak tree outside my window. I honestly don't know. I was a history and SPED teacher. I was not a science teacher. So, but I digress. All right. I think that's all I have. Caitlin, I will throw it back to you.
All right.
Now
Is
stop
there
presenting.
does anyone have any questions? I know there have been some in the chat.
Awesome.
Do you mind if I share my screen real quick so they can get their meeting attendance? It's also in the chat, but just to
Absolutely.
make sure they get that.
And I apologize. I have to head off. I'm double booked, but if you guys have any questions for me, my email is just justin@quizzes.com. Feel free to shoot me an email if you need a video of how something works. I am more than happy to help. But it was a pleasure to meet you guys. Thank you so much. And again, I apologize for having to bounce a few minutes early. But have a great rest of your Friday, and have an awesome weekend.
Thank you so much.
All right,
We
take care, everybody.
appreciate this so much.
You're welcome. Anytime.
Bye, guys.
Thank you as well, Caitlin. All right.